This morning, we are so lucky to have the person who led the prosecution against Megan Boswell joining us live on the show. I want to welcome in Deputy District Attorney in Sullivan County, Tennessee, William Harper. William, good morning to you and congratulations to you and your colleagues on a case well tried and justice served for baby Evelyn.
Thank you. Good morning.
What was the toughest part for you in prosecuting this case, William?
Well, it was just a volume of evidence. I mean, Megan misled the police, law enforcement for months, and they followed all those leads. You had federal investigators, state investigators, local investigators, and there was just a huge volume of evidence. So trying to distill all that down and kind of cut through the stuff that really wasn't pertinent to the case so that you could present it in a digestible form for the jury was really the toughest part.
You and your colleagues certainly did that, William. I always say it's key for prosecutors to know how to try a case with precision, and that you did. And you had a tough job incorporating things that she said out of the courtroom into the courtroom with all of the interviews. I would imagine it would be hard to even keep track of how many people she talked to, who she talked to make sure you're not leaving anything out there that could be used against her. How did you go about that process? Did you have investigators assist you with gathering the media evidence?
We did. It was a process. We actually had to use an outside organization to help us kind of organize it. We're not a huge office by any means, and obviously we have lots of cases we have to prosecute, so we had to kind of use all the resources and then some even outside of our office to be able to put all that together.
I'm sure it's no easy feat, certainly a case like this, and you know, so many eyes on it, William. A case that you might see on any given day have a case of this nature, but this one, people around the world heard about it and were hoping for justice for baby Evelyn. What was it like going through that process? And it was a long one. I mean, we think back to 2020. What was it like all these months? Would you kind of take us behind the scenes and tell us about everything that went into getting to the point of the trial?
It was a long process, and you know, as things unfolded, it was really kind of bizarre. You know, really, I mean, we knew something was odd, something was off, but you know, Megan was such a skilled manipulator, and her lies just led everyone off. So it was very, very difficult to get everything together and try to put everything together in a way that was, you know, that led to ultimately what was going to uncover the case. You know, people wondered why it took so long. It was because you know, Megan's lies were so skilled. I mean, she was, you know, I called her a master manipulator during arguments, and she truly was, even at 18 years old. The stories she told, I mean, they knew they weren't true, but finding, you know, being able to peel back those layers and find out what the actual truth was very, very difficult. And, you know, ultimately, if her dad, Tommy Boswell, had not come forward, you know, I don't know that we'd be here even today, 5 years later. You know, I think Evelyn would still be in that trash can, and nobody would be any wiser.
Wow, William, that's chilling and so heartbreaking to hear, as you know. Your rebuttal was excellent. We have a clip from it. Let's play it now.
This case is the very opposite of an accident. It was an intentional and knowing murder of a child. Megan Boswell got rid of Evelyn so that Megan could do Megan. And she enjoyed it. You've seen the pictures. General Massengill showed you. Hanging out on Blowing Rock, going to the aquarium, Super Bowl party. Megan Boswell sits here in this courtroom today as guilty as she was back in that first week in December.
You know, William, we get to see, you know, how confident you are. What a great litigator. Obviously, you're a very seasoned prosecutor. And When we think of everything that goes into it, our viewers get to see the finished product, right? They get to see you in action at trial. I'm curious, when you're at home, is this a case that you lose sleep over? Is this a case that you can't stop thinking about those pictures of little Evelyn?
Oh yeah, I mean, I'll never have those pictures out of my mind. I mean, General Massengill and I have lived this case day in and day out for literally probably the last 2 months. I mean, there's, I don't know that I've had a day off in the last 2 months, and certainly the last 2 weeks have been just very intense and very emotional.
I'm sure. I always say this. I'm not just saying this because you're here with me now, William, but I always say the people who do this for a living are special people, because somebody's got to do this job. Look at those photos, go through the evidence, try the case, on behalf of that child, that precious victim who is loved and deeply missed. Tell me, William, many of us, myself included, watching this case, as it was just progressing through the system over the last couple years, thought that it may not go to trial, thought that there may be some type of a plea agreement reached. Would you speak to that? Was there any offer made to Megan Boswell ahead of trial?
Well, there were certainly negotiations. I think at some point we thought we were probably close. But ultimately, we didn't get there. There was a lot of discussion about that because obviously there was a lot of outrage in the community. There was a lot of people who probably thought we should have sought even more punishment than what we did. But as prosecutors, at the end of the day, you have to do what you think is right and what you think is appropriate. And we had those discussions, and I think we landed at the proper place.
Would you tell us a little bit about that, please, William? Is Tennessee a state where the death penalty is a possibility in a case like this?
It is. However, there's case law out there that basically says, if you've got a young defendant like Megan was, 18 years old, that essentially it's a disproportionate penalty to impose the death penalty. And ultimately, that's why we decided to just seek life without parole.
Understood. Would your office have been okay with a plea to manslaughter with a significant amount of prison time?
Manslaughter is probably a little low. That probably wouldn't have brought enough time there. Certainly, we needed to send a message, and the community, I don't think would have accepted that as a proper plea in this case.
Sure. Would you tell us what specifically the office would have been okay with that she, I'm assuming, rejected?
Well, I mean, a substantial amount of time, something less than life, but something certainly very close to that.
Mm-hmm. With a plea to murder, and she was unwilling to do that. Understood. William, is there anything else you can tell us about Megan Boswell? Something that you and your colleagues knew about her or about this case that you just weren't allowed to introduce at trial?
I don't know. I think if you saw those interviews that we introduced in trial, that pretty much distills Megan for who she was. I mean, we talked to a number of people who were also friends of hers, people that she had contact with, other family members. And that pretty much is who Megan is. I mean, she was all about Megan, and she would use anyone and everyone to her benefit. I mean, that is, I'm sure there may have been another side to her, but, in conversations that we had with folks, that is ultimately where everyone ended up, which was just, another person that was caught up in Megan's web of manipulation. Which is sad.
It really is. She's a master manipulator, a dangerous person. She's going to wind up exactly where she belongs, behind bars. And William, let me end with a compliment. As we were waiting for the verdict to be read, we could see you and one of Megan's attorneys being very cordial with each other. And I was saying to my analyst guest on the air how wonderful that is to see advocates who are adversaries in the courtroom going at it at trial, but being so professional and so civilized. And we were talking about how oftentimes you get to know the same people in the courthouse where you practice when you do criminal work. And you may find yourself at lunch with someone, one afternoon, and then the next morning picking a jury on opposite sides of counsel table. Did you know these lawyers? Had you had cases with them, or are you friendly with them within the local bar?
Oh, yes. Mr. Scott and I have tried many, many cases over the years, and, he is a very good defense attorney, and, we go at it hard in the courtroom, which is what you're supposed to do. But, at the end of the day, again, we're a small community here, and, we can shake hands and go eat lunch and, disagree about what took place in the courtroom. So I think that's the way it's supposed to work.
It sure is. You're embodying what the rules of professional responsibility are all about, that civility. So you both set a great example, and I'm sure didn't even know that you did it, but our cameras were rolling and we saw it, and we loved seeing your advocacy throughout the trial. It was tremendous. Congratulations again, and you really proved to everyone watching around the world that baby Evelyn mattered. Deputy District Attorney William Harper, thank you so much for the interview and for your time.
Thank you.